Hello, my name is Chard deNiord. I'm the former Poet Laureate of Vermont from 2015 to 2019 before the wonderful poet Mary Ruefle succeeded me in the fall of 2019. She's writing letters to folks as one of her Poet Laureate missions, and I hope maybe you've received a poem. She's writing people about poetry, she's writing about specific poems. I'd love to know exactly what some of her other subjects are. This is her way of personally connecting with folks while she's Poet Laureate and corresponding with them. So I'm going to read a poem today to you by D.H. Lawrence. Can you see that wonderful sky behind me? I'm going to just show you the sky behind me and the bird feeder there. It feels like a very early but cold winter day, but it isn't actually winter yet. It's about 17 degrees here today. I love reading outside. So I'm going to just say just a few words about D.H. Lawrence. He was born in when was he born exactly? He was born in 1885, and he died in 1930. He was an English poet, and he wrote beautifully as a fiction writer as well as a poet. His collected works represent, among other things, an extended reflection upon the dehumanizing effects of modernity and industrialization. Lawrence's writing explores issues such as sexuality, emotional health, vitality, spontaneity, and instinct. He was deeply concerned that people during the initial days of industrialization in the 20th century were losing their humanity. And so he's a particularly powerful and prophetic poet, even for today. Maybe I should say especially today. I'm going to read one of his best-known poems. It's called Snake. And it's a poem that I used to assign my intro to literature students when I was teaching at Providence College. I retired this spring, so it doesn't seem that long ago. At any rate, I used to assign this as a kind of primer to literature and to inspiring my students about the power of animals and creatures to educate. And I often told them before I read this poem what the word education, what the etymology of education is. To lead out of, out of, duco, lead. So to lead students out of their assumptions about what they've been taught before, to think for themselves, and what better creature to lead students out of their assumptions than a snake. Snake. A snake came to my water trough on a hot, hot day, and I, in my pajamas for the heat, to drink there, in the deep, strange, scented shade of the great dark carob tree. I came down the steps with my pitcher and must stand and wait, for there he was at the trough before me. He reached down from a fissure in the earth's wall in the gloom and trailed his yellow-brown slackness soft-bellied down over the edge of the stone trough and rested his throat upon the stone bottom. And where the water had dripped from the tap in a small clearness, he sipped with his straight mouth, softly drank through his straight gums into the slack, long body, silently. Someone was before me at my water trough, and I, like a second comer, waiting. He lifted his head from his drinking as cattle do and looked me vaguely as drinking cattle do and flickered his two-forked tongue from his lips and mused a moment and stooped and drank a little more, being earth brown, earth golden from the burning bowels of the earth on the day of Sicilian July with Etna smoking. The voice of my education said to me, he must be killed, For in Sicily, the black snakes are innocent. The gold are venomous. And voices in me said, if you were a man, you would take a stick and break him now and finish him off. But must I confess how I liked him, how glad I was he had come like a guest in the quiet, to drink at my water trough, and depart peaceful, pacified, and thankless into the burning bowels of the earth. Was it cowardice that I dared not kill him? Was it perversity that I longed to talk to him? Was it humility to feel so honored? I felt so honored. And yet those voices, if you were not afraid, you would kill him. And truly, I was afraid. I was most afraid, and even so, honored still more, that he should seek my hospitality from out of the dark door of the secret earth. He drank enough and lifted his head dreamily as one who was drunken and flickered his tongue like a forked knife on the air, so black, seeming to lick his lips, and looked around like a god unseeing into the air, and slowly turned his head. And slowly, very slowly, as if thrice a dream, proceeded to draw his slow teeth curving round and climb again the broken bank of my wall face. Bear with me for a second while I turn the page. And as he put his head into the dreadful hole, and as he slowly drew up, snake easing his shoulders and entered farther, a sort of horror, a sort of protest against his withdrawing into the horrid black hole, deliberately going into the blackness and slowly drawing himself after, overcame me now. His back was turned. I looked round. I put down my pitcher. I picked up a clumsy log and threw it at the water trough with a clatter. I think it did not hit him, but suddenly that part of him that was left behind convulsed in undignified haste, withered like lightning, and was gone into the black hole, the earth-lipped fissure in the wall front, at which, in the intense still noon, I stared with fascination. And immediately I regretted it. I thought, how paltry, how vulgar, what a mean act. I despised myself and the voices of my accursed human education, and I thought of the albatross, and I wished he would come back, my snake, for he seemed to me again like a king in exile, uncrowned in the underworld, now due to be crowned again. And so I missed my chance with one of the lords of life, and I have something to expiate, a pettiness. Isn't that wonderful, the tension in that poem? His realization that it's beautiful, but the peer pressure, the voice of his human education telling him that he has to kill it, even though he's just suddenly discovered its beauty and doesn't want to kill it, but throws that log anyway to appease the voices of his human education, but then realizing at the end of the poem that he has lost his chance with one of the lords of life and has something to expiate, a pettiness. Thank you. I hope you enjoyed this poem.